Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. So we start with LSU, and you just had this 5-game blitz of SEC action. You were on the road in Starkville and home against Arkansas, and you went to Oxford, and then you went to Missouri and come home for Auburn, and it's fast and furious. And that bye week is lingering out there, but it's not this week. You do have a game this week. It's a Saturday night in Death Valley against Army. And Brian Kelly had a message yesterday at his press availability on Monday about potentially overlooking Army with the bye in Alabama on the back half of this thing.
It'll be important for our guys to think about what's important right now. And the bye week's not important right now. We don't go to the bye week this week. This week we need to focus on our development, and we need to focus on our process, and we need to focus on Army. If we focus on anything else, we'll get beat. This football team is not a team that can play with the dimmer. We're either on or off. And so we need to be on. And so if we're locked in and doing our thing the right way, we're going to have a good Saturday. If we're not, we're going to struggle. And so we'll talk about that today when we meet. We've got to be locked in on our process and how we prepare this week against a really tough opponent.
And look, the guys have got to be locked in. They've got Army this week. They need to go out and play really well. They don't need to be focused on other things. However, this is what you have me for. I don't have to focus on Army. I don't have to game plan for Army. I don't have to lift weights for Army. I don't have to know my assignments for Army, substitution patterns. I don't have to know any of that stuff. I can focus on whatever I want. So I'm not going to focus on the X's and O's against Army right now and the game plan against Army right now. I'm just going to work off the radio man assumption that LSU is going to beat the brakes off of Army. Okay? Army didn't score yet last week against Troy. Okay? Army lost to UL Monroe and scored 13 points. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time focusing on Army. I hope Coach Kelly does. Hope Coach Denbrock does. Hope Coach Houch does. I hope all those players, scholarship, walk-ons, NIL deals, I hope they just lock in on the Black Knights. I'm not. Here's what I'm locked in on, and that's what LSU can do to improve its football team and its football program on Saturday, and what we can expect to analyze post-game and next week as you head into a bye. This is an opportunity for LSU to blitz this team and really do whatever they want in terms of personnel and game plan in this game. Now, we had better than a decade of experience under Les Miles that suggested, hey, these games, they're going to run the football a ton. They're going to win by 4 or 5 scores. The backup quarterback is not going to take any meaningful snaps. Some of the freshmen might get in the fourth quarter when there's only 6,700 people left, and you'll get on down the road. The final score will be 38-10, and that's it. And maybe that's the way Brian Kelly wants to handle this one too. I don't know, but I don't have as much data on Brian Kelly as I did on Les Miles. And with Ed Ogeron, you had a couple of years early, and then you had the weird COVID year where it was all SEC games, and then they were really struggling on the back end, and so there wasn't enough sample size with that either. So I don't know. But with Brian Kelly, I think there are some guys who could get some nice reps in this game. I don't look at this game like I look at a game against Grambling or Southern. Army is a team that has higher caliber players than those two teams. And certainly, and not that Grambling or Southern didn't give any effort, but I know Army's going to give effort. So any rep that you get in this game is not going to be with a guy who's equal to you in terms of talent, but there's going to be effort and discipline, and it's going to be a team that's going to play until the whistle ends. So there are some guys that I would like to see in the game. Certainly Garrett Nussmeier continues to be one of those. And the backup quarterback is always the story these weeks, but Garrett is likely going to get the keys to this thing next year. In an era where your backup quarterback may or may not ever play for you, and that's still the case with Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, we thought, that Miles Brennan was the guy, and then all of a sudden, Jaden Daniels is the guy. It's a fickle position these days with the transfer portal. But it feels like Garrett Nussmeier's got a real chance to be your guy next year. I'd like to see him get as many meaningful snaps as he can. And you know what happens if Garrett Nussmeier doesn't play? If he does play, Jaden Daniels and neither of his ACLs are playing. which is great news for me because you've got bigger fish to fry than Army in the second half. So I hope Garrett Nussmeier, who's only completed 5 passes this year, can get out there and play a little bit. Caleb Jackson can get some meaningful reps. Logan Diggs has carried a heavy workload over the last month. He's been the lead back, and you're going to need him to carry a heavy workload down the road here. He doesn't have to on Saturday. I would love it if Caleb Jackson got those reps. I understand Josh Williams and John Emery are still pieces in this backfield, and they're guys who have earned playing time and are going to get playing time moving forward. I'd like to see Caleb Jackson. He's incredibly skilled. He showed you in Starkville the power with a stiff arm. He showed you on Saturday the power ran over that Auburn secondary member. He showed you the speed on the kickoff return. I'd like to see him put some of those things to use in a game where if he blows a pass preparation deal or fumbles a football or does something that a young player might do, it doesn't matter. I'd love to see him out in the game. Lance Hurd is going to have to play a ton in this game because we don't know what Emory Jones' status is. We do know for this weekend, but what it is for Alabama after the bye. Lance Hurd needs as many reps as he can get at right tackle. That is a big, big deal potentially for this team. If you're going to go to Tuscaloosa and put a true freshman out there at right tackle, I'd really like him to get 3 quarters worth of work against Army inside Tiger Stadium, where his false starts and holding penalties aren't very costly to you. Maybe Mac Markway and Kenmorian Pimpton, who have combined for 3 catches this year. We looked at that tight end room and went, well, you got Mason Taylor, and that's a good start, but it's a lot of freshmen after that. Maybe they'll be contributors. And we went out to practice, and we told you about the jump balls that Kenmorian Pimpton was pulling down, and we just haven't seen those guys used very much because Mason Taylor's the one tight end. He's doing a great job. He's been pretty healthy. No reason to go with anybody else. Markway played a little bit more when Taylor went down, but he's come back, and those 2 guys are kind of been phased out. I'd like to see them maybe phased back in on Saturday night. And here's just a massive overreaction on my part on a Wednesday of a game week with a bye week coming after that. I realize this is a sick and twisted thought, but it's one that comes through my head every time they play one of these games, especially when I know what's coming next. Just know this, Brian Kelly. Just know this, Matt House. Every single starter that you put out on the field Saturday night in the second half is, by definition, at risk for the first half of the Alabama game. Okay? You want to put Harold Perkins out there? You want to put Mason Smith out there? You want to put Major Burns out there? They get a targeting call? Missing a half. Now, the most famous example of that was Devin White in the Mississippi State game, getting that targeting call in 2018, where he couldn't play in the first half against Alabama. But that's just a fact of the rules. The rule's atrocious. It's an awful, awful, awful rule. But it exists. So it's less likely with your offensive guys. It is more likely with your defensive guys that they could get that whistled on them. So if you want to get some young guys some reps, I might think about that in the second half. Again, I don't think coaches coach like that. I think they're thinking they want to get their guys out there, execute the game plan, play, and we'll deal with whatever happens. Can't coach against injuries, can't coach against targeting. Well, you can coach against injuries and targeting. You put them on the bench. And guys can get hurt in practice. That can happen. But in terms of targeting, that happens on a Tuesday. You just do the next rep. That happens on a Saturday. You miss half the game against Alabama. So let's see Ashton Stamps and LaTerrence Welsh and Ryan Yates. Army's not going to throw a lot, but let's see those guys out there. Good game for Whit Weeks to get in there early and get his reps if Omar Spates is kind of taking those reins. Really nice opportunity for Deshaun Womack to get in there and play. That's a guy with great talent who's flashed a little bit and shown some pops. Let's see a little bit out against Army. I don't know if anything's going to happen. Maybe the starters play 3 quarters and 2 drives, and you get the backups for garbage time. But LSU's offense is built in a way that they ought to be able to jet out in front of Army. If they can jet out to those kind of starts against Auburn and against Arkansas and Mississippi State and all that, you can do it against Army. This is not a less team that's toss dive, run left and right. You're running clock, and it takes you a while to score 28 points. LSU can score 28 points in the first quarter of some of these games. That puts you in a position moving forward to do the things you need to do heading into the bye week and heading into Alabama. I'd like to see a bunch of young players in the second half on Saturday. We'll see if Brian Kelly feels the same way. But they're not overlooking Army. Just leaving that to me, neighborhood-friendly radio guy. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.